because Sunday means it's the beginning of a new week, and I happen to like my weeks, even though they can be difficult. I don't say, oh my goodness, Monday's coming. I kind of like it because I can start something new and start my work. But then by the time Friday comes along, I'm like, whew, glad that week's over, and it's going to be the weekend. So I kind of like Fridays and Sundays. But today is Sunday, so it's my story, and I'm going to think of a story to tell. And once upon a time, there was 2 stormtroopers, and they had gone to stormtrooper school together, and they graduated. And one was T-135, and his friend was T-140. They were a few stormtroopers apart. And it was time for them to get assigned to their first assignment. And so they were all gathered around the stormtrooper assignment board, and they were looking up their names. And T-135 said, oh, I'm stationed on Tatooine. Oh, that's terrible. It's a desert planet. And T-140 said, me too. Look, the whole 130 and 140 is stationed there. Man, well, at least we can hang out together. That's right, said T-140. And so they got their special desert stormtrooper gear, went and got on a shuttle that took them to a transfer station, and then they got on a kind of a yuckier, rundowner shuttle, and that took them to the system that Tatooine was in. And it was a long time, and then they got on a really rundown transport that took them down to the surface of Tatooine. Oh man, said T-135. This place is terrible. Yeah, said T-140. And they reported for duty, and the governor there said, okay, well, you're going to be stationed in Mos Eisley. You're going to hang out and just watch cars go by and aliens and stuff and check IDs. So they hung out there for a while. One day they got a call, and it was a call from the governor, and they went and visited him, and he said, well, we've heard that the secret plans to our home base have been stolen, and they might be somewhere out in the desert. Oh, said T-135, our secret base. Can't let those plans get into anybody's hands. Let's go find them. And so they took a squadron of stormtroopers, and they, some of them took the transport, but other of them were riding the dewbacks that were native to the desert. These were lizards, and they could go kind of fast, and then they would walk around too. And they got to a crash site, and they looked around. And T-135 picked up a little piece of metal, and he said, look, sir, droids. And their commanding officer said, very good. We're going to have to follow those droids to wherever they were. And they followed the droids, and they found a band of scavengers. Now, these scavengers were little teeny creatures, and they had rat-like faces. But because the heat was so intense, they covered their faces with black cloth. And they had glowing eyes and little brown robes. And some people called them Jawas. And T-135 stopped the transport and said, all right, we want to know where you get those droids. And the Jawa said, and T-140 said, I can't even understand this guy. And T-135 said, I have a Jawa translator, let me turn it on. And the Jawa said, we're going to kill all you stormtroopers. And the stormtrooper said, whoa, and he took out his gun. He said, we're just coming here to look for the droids. We don't want any trouble. And T-140 said, yeah, you don't want any trouble with the Empire. And the Jawa said, And the translator said, we're going to shoot all you guys right in the head with our huge laser gun, and then we're going to run over you with our transport. And T-135 said, that's it, everybody up against the wall. And they all the Jawas moved up against the wall and raised their hands. And T-140 said, all right, tell us where those droids are. And one of the Jawas said, and the translator said, we're going to blow up your whole hometown. And the Stormtrooper said, that's it. And they started shooting at the Jawas, and the Jawas were running and yelling, and they shot all the Jawas. It was terrible. Put them in a big pile. Then T-135 said, what's this translator set to? And they looked, and it said, oh, it's not set to Jawa, it's set to Jabba. Oh, said T-140. So we don't know actually what the Jawas were saying. No, I guess we don't. And they moved on. And they followed the tracks backwards until they came to a farm. And it was a moisture farm. And they said, come on out of there. And there was an old lady and an old man that came out, and they said, did you buy some Jawas, some droids from some Jawas? And the man said, yes. He said, where are they? And he said, well, they took off, and my nephew is out looking for them. And the lady said, you can stay here and have some tea with us until he returns. Okay, they said. So they came in and sat down at the kitchen. And as the lady was starting some tea, all of a sudden, there was a short circuit in the kitchen. And a kitchen fire started. And the Stormtroopers were like, come on, get out. We got to get out of this place before the whole thing blows. And the Stormtroopers ran out, but the aunt and uncle didn't make it. And the whole thing exploded. And they died in the fire. It was awful. T-135 and T-140 said, oh no, these people have gotten killed. We got to find those droids before the plans to our home base get in the wrong hands. And so they took off. And they went back to Mos Eisley and said, we couldn't find him, but the droids are out there with the nephew, but we don't know where he was. But we do know what kind of car he was driving. He was driving one of those hover cars. And the governor said, okay, good work. We need to set up checkpoints everywhere and check every single hover car that comes into Mos Eisley and get those droids back. And so T-135 and T-140 were there. And checking cars and all sorts of things and IDs. And along came one car, and it had a young boy and an old man and two droids on it. And T-135 said, this can't be them because there's an old man traveling with them. And T-140 said, you're probably right, but we got to check every single person. T-135 said, show me your ID. And the old man said, you don't need to see his ID. And T-140 said, we don't need to see his ID. And T-135 said, we don't need to see his ID. And the old man said, move along. And T-135 said, move along. And the car moved along. And T-135 and T-140 kind of snapped out of a daze. T-140 said, what happened? T-135 said, I don't know. Let us not report this. And so they checked a few more cars, and then all of a sudden, they got a report. There's been gunshots fired at the cantina on the far side of Mos Eisley. And T-135 said, come on, let's go. And they hopped on their dewbacks, and they raced across town, thinking maybe they would catch a break and find those people that had the droids, that had the secret plans to their home base. And they got to the bar and went inside, and they asked somebody, we heard there was some gunshots. And somebody said, no, it was a laser sword. T-140 said, laser sword, that's impossible. That would mean a Jedi. Then all the Jedis are gone. And T-135 said, yeah, it must have been something else. Let's look around. Where did you say it happened? They said, over there. He's sitting over there. And the stormtroopers came over to a corner, And it was just some pilot and a scruffy-looking monkey guy. And they looked around, and the pilot waved, and they didn't see any old man, so they kept on going. And so they needed to find out where this old man was, and they paid a spy, and the spy said, okay, I'm going to find out. And a little while later, the spy said, I did find out. They sold their speeder, and they have the droids, and they're trying to get off the planet. And T-135 said, maybe they know that they have those plans, and they're trying to sell them or something. And T-140 said, yeah, we got to get those guys. And so they asked the spy, find out where they're taking off from. And the spy followed them. And the spy reported back in a little while later. It's Docking Bay 237. And so T-135 and T-140 said, come on, let's go. Get all the guys and let's get up there. And they went running across town on their dewbacks to get to Docking Bay 237. And they finally got there. And they met their troop. And they said, okay, troop, these guys are probably armed and dangerous. And they have the plans to our home base. And they're going to try to escape. And who knows what they're going to do with them. We got to stop them. Okay, let's go. And they all went running in there and said, stop you there. But then it was the pilot they recognized from the Mos Eisley Cantina. And T-35 said, it's him. Blast him. And they all started shooting. And the pilot and the monkey guy said, everybody run on. And there was 2 droids there, and the droids were going up the ramp. And they saw the kid and the old man from where they had tried to get by him. And they said, it's them. Get them. And they were shooting everywhere. And the pilot and the monkey ran up, and they were shooting. And some of their fellow stormtroopers got killed. And then the spaceship took off, and they couldn't stop them. So they radioed the governor. The governor said, never mind. We'll track them. The end.
Oh yeah. Wonder what happens next on the part 2. You get to turn it off.